Hernan Drago. One of the most underrated models, and honestly, one of the most handsome men out there. Just look at him: masculine face, sharp bone structure, hollow cheeks, tall height, athletic build, hunter eyes, and that razor-sharp jawline. His face is basically textbook perfection, like someone custom-built him in a lab. He's in his 50s and still looks like that. And not in a good for his age kind of way. He legitimately mogs guys half his age without even trying. Just standing there, silent, straight face, and boom, he dominates the room. So just imagine what he looked like in his prime. The chaos he must have caused without even saying a word. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, Hernan was everywhere. His sharp masculine face and those sky blue hunter eyes made him a walking billboard for male beauty. Brands chased him, magazines couldn't get enough, and his face was plastered across fashion campaigns from Argentina to Europe. He worked with top designers, appeared in countless editorials, and became a household name, not just in Argentina, but internationally. He's been a major figure in the Argentine fashion scene for over 2 decades, and his legacy still holds weight today. But what most people don't know about this underrated Argentinian model is his past. It wasn't all runways and flashing lights. In fact, as a teen, Hernan was bullied badly. He used to hide just to avoid going to school. He's openly admitted to crying at night, trying to deal with the pressure and anxiety. Not exactly the backstory you expect from a guy who looks like a walking Greek statue. So how did he go from that, a quiet, insecure kid, to becoming one of the most ridiculously attractive men on the planet? Attractive to the point where women literally offered him serious money for one night together. And that's not even the craziest part. There's a whole dark side to the modeling world he experienced, a side most people never see. And his face, that insane bone structure, it opened doors you wouldn't believe. He even got close to playing Superman in Hollywood. In this video, we're breaking it all down: the rise, the looks, the fame, the struggle, and the mystery behind Hernan Drago. Let's get into it. Hernan Drago was born on May 17, 1975, in the province of Buenos Aires, Argentina. But behind all the fame and the handsome face, his life off camera has had some heavy moments, especially when it comes to family. Hernan opened up about one of the hardest parts of his life: his father's battle with Alzheimer's. As the disease progressed, his dad had to be moved to a care facility, while his mom stayed home. The situation had become too much, even with medication. He described how his father slowly became like a child again, in some ways a blessing, as he was less aware of the pain around him. But it was also heartbreaking, especially when his dad began confusing him with his brother or grandson. Despite it all, Hernan remains grounded. He's grateful his father got to see the man he became: strong, peaceful, and content. More than anything, he hopes his dad leaves this world with the same smile he still wears today. Hernan Drago's life might look like a perfect success story today: the chiseled face, the fame, the international modeling career. But if you rewind to his childhood, the story was very different. It was a tough, painful journey that shaped who he became. Growing up, Hernan was bullied relentlessly, but not for reasons you'd expect. He wasn't teased for being handsome or popular. Instead, he was the chubby kid. By the time he was just 10 years old, he had gained a lot of weight, almost 20 kilos more than other kids his age. At school and even at the club where kids hung out, the teasing never stopped. He was called names. Fatigue was one of the nicknames that stuck. And when it came to playing soccer, he only got picked if he brought his own ball. Otherwise, no one let him join. Back then, people didn't call it bullying. It was just called teasing, but it was deeply hurtful. Hernan felt invisible and excluded. He was never invited to parties, didn't go to dances, and his self-esteem took a heavy hit. He remembers hiding food under his bed, stealing sandwiches, cookies, and snacks late at night when everyone else was asleep. Eating quietly in secret became a kind of painful ritual, an escape from the anxiety and mockery that followed him everywhere. The more weight he gained, the worse the teasing became. It was a vicious cycle that left a mark on him that lasted for years. By the time Hernan was about 14 or 15, he hit his breaking point. The constant loneliness, the tears before sleep, the feeling of being an outcast, it all became too much. One day, he just snapped. He was done feeling sorry for himself, and decided to take control of his life. He didn't want to be that bullied chubby kid anymore. But instead of starving himself or giving in to the pain, he chose a different path: discipline. He began exercising with fierce determination, turning his anger and frustration into fuel. Twice a day he was at the gym. Every morning he went running. He didn't stop eating. He realized food wasn't the enemy. It was about balance and taking care of himself. Slowly but surely, a new version of Hernan emerged, a healthier, stronger, more confident young man. Modeling wasn't even on his radar at first. All he wanted was to prove to himself and to others that he was more than the hurtful labels thrown at him. That chubby boy who once hid food and hid from life taught Hernan lessons no one else could. He learned respect, not just for others but for himself. He learned what it means to work hard and to refuse to let the world define his worth. Years later, life would flip the script in the most incredible way. The same kid who was mocked and excluded became an international underwear model, traveling the world, starring in campaigns, and embodying a new standard of male beauty. Even now, Hernan carries that 14-year-old boy inside him. Whenever he faces challenges, he remembers that painful time. That boy became his inner warrior, a reminder that pain can transform into purpose. Life isn't what bullies say it is, it's what you make of it when you stop making excuses and start believing in yourself. Hernan speaks openly about his past, not to play the victim but to help others, especially parents and young people. He wants parents to recognize what their kids might be silently going through and to teach children not to bully. And to every kid still stuck in that dark place of exclusion and self-doubt, Hernan's message is clear: you can break free. The journey is hard, but the reward is worth it. Because in the end, it wasn't modeling that changed Hernan's life. It was that moment alone in his bedroom, crying, deciding he wouldn't give up. That decision forged the man the world now sees. Bullying leaves scars that run deep. Hernan Drago's story reminds us all how important it is to stand against bullying and support each other. If you're struggling with this now, remember, you're not alone. Help is out there, things can get better. Hernan Drago's life took a sharp turn one day on the streets of Buenos Aires. He wasn't looking for fame, he wasn't chasing the spotlight. He was just a teenager, navigating life like any other kid from a modest background. But life had other plans. His sharp facial structure, piercing blue eyes, and quietly intense energy stood out even in the busiest corners of the city. He had that kind of presence, undeniable, even if he didn't know it yet. A talent scout spotted him in passing, and something clicked. It didn't take a second glance. Hernan had the look, a rare mix of rugged masculinity and natural elegance that the fashion world craved. The scout pointed him toward Pancho Dato Models, one of the most prestigious agencies in Argentina. What followed wasn't a glamorous photo shoot or an instant contract. It was something far more random and oddly poetic. He had been walking to meet a girl, someone he had casually met, and she told him to pick her up from work. When he got there, he rang the doorbell. The sign read, Dato Models. It felt like a coincidence, but in hindsight, it was the start of everything. Pancho Dato himself opened the door. One look at Hernan, and the gears started turning. He asked him a simple question: "What are you doing here?" And Hernan, still unaware of what was about to unfold, said he was just there to pick someone up. That's when Pancho made an unexpected offer: "Cut your hair, and you can work here." At the time, Hernan had long hair that reached down to his waist. It was the fashion, but he didn't hesitate. He chopped it all off and stepped into a new world. By 16, he was officially modeling. By 17, he was flying across continents. He starred in more than 150 commercials and walked in runways that most people only ever see in magazines. His life turned into a blur of airports, hotel rooms, and fashion shows. There were 4 a.m. flights, back-to-back shoots, and days so disorienting that he'd wake up and have to check the hotel keycard just to remember what country he was in. He once said it felt like he came from -10 and somehow reached 10. And he wasn't exaggerating. The boy who once hid food under his bed was now the face of high-fashion campaigns. Throughout his career, Hernan worked with major international brands that trusted him to carry their image. He modeled for Hugo Boss, the iconic German brand known for timeless sophistication. He fronted campaigns for Volmont, one of the world's most exclusive skincare and luxury wellness houses. And closer to home, he became a familiar face for Matis's, a brand that resonated deeply within Latin America's fashion scene. But it wasn't just about looking good on camera. Hernan had something deeper, an adaptability, a quiet strength that made him stand out in every frame. Designers trusted him, brands loved him. He could pull off anything: luxury elegance, rugged casual, and high-concept editorial. He became a household name, not just in Argentina but across fashion capitals. Still, fame didn't blind him. As the years passed and his children began to grow, Hernan made a decision. He slowed down. He started turning down international gigs so he could stay in Argentina and be present as a father. The same discipline that once pushed him to run every morning as a teenager now guided him to protect his peace and prioritize his family. Looking back, Hernan often describes that period of global modeling as both incredible and exhausting. He poured everything into it. There's handsome, and then there's Hernan Drago. His face isn't just attractive, it's rare. Not the kind of face you pass by at the supermarket or see on a regular train ride. It's the kind of face that looks like it came out of a dream or a high-end fashion magazine. Defined masculine features and sky-blue eyes that stood out effortlessly. That balanced blend of ruggedness and elegance that makes people stare. For many women, it's not a question of if they'd say yes to a man like that, it's how could they ever say no. And Hernan knows it. Not in an arrogant way, but in the quiet amused way of someone who's lived through the strange extremes of beauty and fame. He once shared a story that even he couldn't believe while it was happening. Back when he was the face of an international fragrance brand, he traveled constantly. One of those trips took him to Ecuador. It was a glamorous launch event with over 2,000 people in attendance. As part of a promotion, only 10 lucky winners were selected to come up on stage and take a picture with the model, Hernan himself. He was on stage, the lights were bright, the cameras clicking. He stood there posing when one of the winners walked up to him. She looked at him for a moment and said it, softly but boldly, "How beautiful you are." He smiled and thanked her, but she wasn't finished. She said, "No, thank you isn't enough. Can we do something, spend a night together for example?" At first, Hernan was taken aback. It was so sudden, and so forward. He told her no, but she didn't give up. She told him she was a wealthy woman, that she could pay. That's when things really took a turn. She started making offers. First it was $1,000. Then it became more. 2,000. Then 5. The number kept going up, right there on the spot. Eventually, it reached $10,000. $10,000 for one night with Hernan Drago. He was in a relationship at the time, so he refused. But the absurdity of the moment stuck with him. He even joked later, saying that same year he changed his car, and yeah, the story became a bit of a running laugh among his friends and fans. But even with all the humor, it highlighted something very real. When you look like Hernan, when you carry that rare kind of physical appeal, you attract attention that goes far beyond admiration. Sometimes it crosses into obsession, into fantasy, into outrageous offers made in bold whispers backstage or after a show. And this wasn't the only time it happened. Another woman, after a fashion show, had walked right up to him and offered him money for sex. The kind of offer that people might hear in movies or tabloids, but Hernan lived it. But behind the flash of cameras and the glitz of international fashion weeks, Hernan Drago's modeling career wasn't always glamorous. Beneath the polished covers and magazine spreads was a much darker chapter, one marked by exploitation, pressure, and moments that tested his values before he even turned 18. He was just starting out, 17 years old, new to the world of modeling, full of dreams and ambition. That's when he first experienced something no aspiring model should ever have to face. At the time, Hernan was working with a modeling agency. He'd just gone through a round of international castings from Argentina, tough auditions where young hopefuls competed for a chance to be noticed globally. And he made it. His booker, the person responsible for connecting models with jobs and managing their careers, called him to deliver the good news. He had landed a major international campaign, a huge opportunity, the kind of job that could change his life. Travel to New York, and financial stability. But then came the condition. The booker told him plainly with no shame, that if Hernan wanted the job, he'd have to sleep with him. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't hinted, it was stated outright. Hernan stood his ground, he looked the man in the eye and told him, "Don't ever say anything like that to me again." That was it, no room for debate, no second chances. For a teenager from Argentina trying to make it in a ruthless industry, it was an act of courage most wouldn't expect at that age. And yet, the booker called again 2 weeks later. Something had changed, likely pressure from the client, who wanted Hernan badly for the campaign. Around that time, a new person joined the agency and told the models that if they were experiencing anything uncomfortable, they should speak up. Hernan did. He explained everything that had happened with the booker. The response was alarming, but not surprising. "This guy's been around for a while," the agency rep told him. Hernan was given a choice: keep working with the same team and let it slide, or leave and walk away from a life-changing opportunity. He left. Grabbed his portfolio, shut the door on that agency forever, and never looked back. Of course, he lost the job, and he never worked with that client again. But he protected something far more important, his dignity. Shortly after, he joined a rival agency, one with a better reputation. That's when his international career truly began. He started traveling around the world, booking more serious jobs, and building his name in the industry on his own terms. But that wasn't the only time he was targeted. Around the same age, 17 or 18, he was also helping out with his father's real estate business, running errands like bank deposits. One afternoon, he was standing in line at a bank when a man around 30 walked up to him. Completely out of nowhere, the man offered him money in exchange for sex. No introduction, no context, just straight to the offer. He asked Hernan if he wanted to go to a nearby apartment. Hernan was stunned. He didn't know what to say. He stayed calm and politely replied, "No, thank you, I'm not interested." But the man didn't take the hint. Instead, he pushed further and asked, "How much do you charge?" Even now, Hernan describes the moment as completely unexpected, and it stayed with him, not because of fear or trauma, but because it showed him how often young attractive men in this world are sexualized, manipulated, and seen as objects by people in power. Years later, when Hernan told these stories on TV, he didn't hold back. He spoke openly about the vulnerability of young models, especially those coming from small towns, far from their families, wide-eyed and desperate to make it. He warned that in moments like that, when someone makes you a false promise in exchange for something you're not comfortable giving, it's a slippery slope. If you say yes once, you might never get back to who you were before. It's a very complicated issue, but we have to stay alert. Hernan Drago didn't just survive those moments, he became stronger because of them. And in a world obsessed with surface beauty, he proved that the real strength comes from what's underneath. What if I told you that Hernan Drago almost became Superman? Yes, that's Superman. Cape, symbol, Hollywood spotlight and all. It's one of those almost forgotten stories buried under the modeling fame and TV appearances, but it's real. At the peak of his modeling career, Drago came incredibly close to playing the most iconic superhero of all time. And what's even more surprising, he turned it down. It happened nearly 2 decades ago. Hollywood was casting for a new Superman film. The search was global, thousands of applications, headshots, and portfolios from every corner of the world. They were looking for a face that could carry the legacy of the Man of Steel. A masculine jawline, timeless good looks, charisma, and the physicality to fill out the suit. Drago fit the bill perfectly. At 6 feet 2 inches, with chiseled features and a presence that already stopped crowds, he was the kind of man you could believe came from Krypton. He submitted his photos to an international agency. And out of all the hopefuls, he was shortlisted. One of just 7, 8, maybe 10 men worldwide who were selected to move forward to the final stage in the United States. And Hernan was the only Argentine on the list. But then came the twist. When the time came to board that flight to America and audition in person, Hernan didn't go. He just didn't show up. Not because he wasn't good enough, not because he got cold feet. But because, deep down, he knew it wasn't his dream. He would later explain that he had passed that first big casting, and when they told him he had to travel to the United States for the final stage, he simply decided not to go. It shocked everyone. For most people, that kind of opportunity is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. It's a straight shot into stardom, red carpets, and Hollywood premieres, but Hernan wasn't chasing that. He wasn't trying to become an actor, he wasn't trying to leave Argentina or trade in his life for something that didn't feel authentic. He put it plainly, it wasn't his dream, it wasn't his goal, he wasn't an actor. He didn't want to move away from his country or be far from his family. For a moment, he thought about doing it just for the story. Just to be able to say that he was Superman in Hollywood, and then came back. But in the end, the story he carries now, of choosing honesty over fame, means more to him than the role ever could. He smiled and said he thinks the anecdote is worth more than what it would have been. So he never wore the cape. He never flew across the screen or saved the world on camera. But somewhere out there, in an alternate timeline, Hernan Drago was Superman. And even without the movie, his story still feels larger than life. After conquering the modeling world, Hernan Drago made a seamless transition to television. With his charisma, striking presence, and natural ease in front of the camera, he became a familiar face in Argentine households. Over time, he carved out a strong presence as a host and regular guest on a variety of shows, from entertainment programs to reality panels. His charm, humor, and grounded personality made him stand out, and before long, he wasn't just a model anymore, he was a full-fledged TV personality. Off-screen, his personal life drew just as much attention. In 2004, Drago married Barbara Kudik. The two were together for nearly 2 decades, raising a family and building a life together. They eventually separated in 2019, but even after the separation, one surprising detail caught the public's attention: they still lived under the same roof. People didn't understand it at first. Why stay living together after parting ways? But for Hernan, the answer was simple: it was for the children. Hernan is a father of 2, Luca and Lola. He explained that continuing the daily routine they had shared for 20 years made the transition easier, especially for their children. The goal was normalcy and stability, a sense of continuity in a time that could have felt uncertain. It wasn't about rekindling the past, it was about honoring it, and ensuring their children still felt the comfort of home, even if things had changed. Just look at Hernan. He's in his 50s and still does campaigns for underwear. Hernan Drago is seriously underrated. Maybe it's because he wasn't born in the United States. If Hernan had been born in LA or New York instead of Argentina, things could have turned out very differently. With his face, his height, his charisma, Hollywood would have eaten him up. He had everything it takes to be an international icon. Not just in modeling, but in acting, campaigns, red carpets, the whole deal. But sometimes, talent isn't enough. Sometimes geography shapes the path more than we'd like to admit. And while Hernan became a legend in Argentina, the world never fully caught on. Still, his story is worth telling, because it's not just about fame, it's about choices, character, and what success really means. And if you're into stories like his, models who broke boundaries, who redefined beauty and stayed true to themselves, then check out our other videos too. We've talked about Sean O'Pride, Jordan Barrett, Chico Lachowski, all the modern-day Adonises who've shaped the modeling world in their own way. Their stories are just a click away, and trust me, you won't want to miss them.